Hello, and welcome to the 5th episode of Mixed Media Reviews. My name is Kelsey, and today I'll be talking about a TV show. This week's TV show is Lucifer, which is now a Netflix original. This week I am very excited because I got a new microphone, so hopefully I won't be too quiet and there won't be a ton of excess noise. I think it's also going to be a bit easier to edit as I can record directly into the program that I've been using to edit, which is Audacity, if anyone wants to know. These past couple episodes I've been using that. It's just been a little bit easier for me. So let's jump into it. The first time I watched Lucifer was during preview night at San Diego Comic-Con. And if you're not familiar, preview night is where they show a few new pilot episodes of shows that are going to be coming out that year or perhaps the next year. And that year we also got to watch Blind Spot and Supergirl. They also typically have an unaired episode of Teen Titans Go. And shows that I see on preview night always hold a special place in my heart. And Lucifer was certainly no different. With Lucifer, I don't really remember hearing anything about the show prior to seeing the pilot, but I was certainly hooked after that first episode, and I continued to watch it as it came out. I was very sad to hear that Fox had dropped it after 3 seasons, but was so incredibly happy when Netflix picked it up, and season 5 was split into 2 parts, so we just got the second half a little bit ago. It's going to be probably about a little over 2 weeks when this comes out. Lucifer follows Lucifer Morningstar, surprise, surprise, in Los Angeles after he gets bored and leaves the underworld to find his own enjoyment among the humans. There in LA, he runs a successful nightclub called Lux and is well connected, giving people what they truly desire in exchange for a future favor. When a star he helped is murdered in front of his nightclub, he meets Chloe Decker, a detective for the LAPD. Over the course of the investigation, Lucifer finds himself drawn to not only the mystery and adventure, but to Chloe Decker herself. He likes the excitement of solving a murder and the punishing that comes with catching the killer. After they solve the case, Lucifer offers to consult with Chloe Decker, and thus begins their partnership. This episode is going to be slightly different. This is the first one I've done of a show that has had multiple seasons. And this one I've decided that I'm mostly just going to focus on the latest season, specifically 5B, the second part of the season 5 that just came out. Instead of the entire show, I will kind of briefly talk about, some general things or some things that happened in other seasons, but for the most part, my deep dive will be into the second half of season 5. But I can certainly return later and do season by season if that's something that interests you. So leave me a comment or send me a message if you'd like to hear more of the Lucifer seasons. And before we jump in, this is going to be a heavy spoiler episode, no holding back. And that includes the second part of season 5, which again only dropped a couple weeks ago. So if you haven't watched it yet or you want to watch the entire show without any spoilers, you should probably wait until after you see it to listen in. This is going to be the only spoiler warning of the show, so be warned. First, let's talk about some more general things that I liked. And first up, 2 words, Tom Ellis. Tom Ellis plays Lucifer, and I think he does such a wonderful job. His accent gives him that charm that you'd associate with a character that can draw out people's desires, and more than that, Tom just kind of seems like a delightful human being, and he just plays the part so well that it really makes you believe that he is truly Lucifer Morningstar. Something I really like about this show is Lucifer's ability. He can look into a person's eyes and draw out their innermost desire. Lucifer's ability helps them solve murders by drawing out the murderer's innermost desire of wanting someone dead or out of the way or whatever their innermost desire is, but it kind of causes them to expel a confession and confirm their guilt. But it can also have unexpected and hilarious confessions that show their innocence. And I think it's a great tool that both Lucifer and the detective Chloe utilize, but it doesn't ever really seem to be overdone, and it can be really fun how Lucifer can draw out people's desires. I also really liked all of the characters. They seem to have pretty good growth, good backstory. They're more than just bodies to fill the cast, but actual characters that we can watch grow and regress and live their lives. Amenadiel, played by the Buffy alum D.B. Woodside, has a lot of growth from the strict follower of God to becoming his own man and trying to be a better dad than his own father. But also, the way he treats Lucifer and the way he fully believes in him and supports his quest to become God in that last season is such a tremendous arc that his character goes through. At first, hating Lucifer and kind of blaming him and telling him he deserves his punishment of being down in the underworld. To go from that Amenadiel to the Amenadiel that fully supports Lucifer's goal to become God is really quite transformative, and I really enjoyed watching that growth in real time. Dan also has his own great arc, with being a dirty cop to trying to make up for all the mistakes of his past. Maze, of course, which I'll talk a little bit more in a bit, also has great character development. Same goes for Ella, same goes for Linda, Chloe, and even Trixie. I think they do pretty well in making sure that everyone has something and they aren't just, like I said, bodies to fill up a cast. I really like Lucifer's character development. Lucifer goes from a narcissistic man, an angel, who is trying to fulfill being the devil, to a man/angel who is trying to prove he is good and that he can do the right thing. And even then, we see hints of this man/angel that Lucifer truly is in the first episode. When the famous musician comes to Lucifer in the beginning of the pilot, she talks to him about all the bad that came with the good. She wants to know if she sold her soul to the devil and lays out just all of the bad things that have happened since Lucifer was able to connect her to the people that make her famous. And he says she owes him a favor, to which she seems kind of nervous about. But his favor is for her to pull herself together. He genuinely wants her to have a better life. This isn't him trying to get her to do something bad or something that she may not like to do, nor is it even something that he's going to benefit from. This is him genuinely caring about her, because at the heart of who Lucifer is goodness. And while we see that more vibrantly in later seasons, we also see it tucked away under his false devil persona, that persona of not caring and being evil, like in the second episode of the first season when he's speaking with Linda, the therapist, and states that he'd still kick a puppy. Obviously, he wouldn't, but he likes to play up that side of him. And this is something that I think is done really well throughout the entire show and is incredibly consistent. He's always playing a role, and he says he never lies, but I think the one loophole is that he kind of lies to himself about who he is, because he's not actually the person that other people believe him to be, but he's constantly trying to be that person. And as we see over the course of the show, Lucifer hates himself. It's partly why he continues to play up that fake persona, even though deep down he doesn't really feel like he's being true to himself. It's this self-hatred that he finally kind of realizes he has and says it out loud. And this happens in season 4 at the end of episode 8. He's talking with Linda and says it's hard for him to drown out the voices that whisper in his ear that he's evil. He's drowning in it. Then he comes clean. I can't stop asking myself, why do I hate myself so much? Then in the following episode, he repeats this revelation to Chloe, only to discover that he's self-actualizing his deepest fear, and his skin is beginning to turn into his devil skin. This is his self-fulfilling prophecy. He's told he's evil all his life, by the other angels, by the humans he walks amongst, and even by his own father, he thinks, by sending him down to rule over the underworld and punish the evil in the world. So he becomes that man. He self-actualizes his face, his devil persona, his black wings. These weren't given to him by God. He gave them to himself. And we see that at the end of season 4, this manifestation of self-hatred at its highest point. When he fully becomes the devil persona, the bat wings and all. And Chloe says to him that it's because he feels guilty for the sins of all humanity. He blames himself more than anyone else does. That in order for him to move forward, he has to actually forgive himself. He, of course, isn't quite there yet, but he accepts that forgiveness is the path that he wants to take. He wants to be that person who can forgive himself, who can love himself. And just like that, he is able to become himself again. But it's this self-hatred that we see from the pilot episode all the way through that drives Lucifer all the way to the end of season 5 and his quest to become better, to be a literal god, to prove everyone wrong, including himself. Because this is all for him to prove to himself, to prove to everyone that he is a good man, and it's so he can finally forgive himself for the mistakes he's made, to finally love himself and to be loved by Chloe. I think that's why I really like the choice they made to make him vulnerable around Chloe. It's the metaphor of how closed off he was to the world and his family. It's him beginning to open up to Chloe as their relationship grows. We find out later that God made Chloe for Lucifer, which is totally weird, but not the point right now. It wasn't because God made her for him that made him vulnerable around her. Not really. It was still in Lucifer. It was because angels are self-actualizing. So the more Lucifer began to open up around Chloe, the more vulnerable he becomes, physically. Being able to be hurt by bullets and knives, his strength diminishes. We see him turn it back on even when he starts to get scared that he's opening up too much to her. When he's scared that he's not worthy of her love. I think this is great storytelling. It's a way to show his fears in a different way. Now, the longer that shows go on, the larger the storylines tend to get, especially in like supernatural type of shows. Looking at, well, supernatural, but also shows like X-Files. In Lucifer season 5, we see the storyline get big with the appearance of Michael. And of course, we have seen some other angels previously, and even Lucifer's mother, who is another celestial. But this leads to the largest storyline yet in the mid-series finale, and that is the appearance of God. I think with Lucifer, it was a very natural progression to reach what would normally be quite a showstopper of a storyline. And in true Lucifer style, we see that not only is God not the ultimate showstopper, but that the storyline has continued to grow even bigger with Lucifer's quest to become the next god. And then at the end of the season, we see he may have even been successful. It will be very interesting to see what season 6 holds and how much bigger things can get. God being on the show was also pretty hilarious. Dennis Haysbert plays a terrific God, and he's definitely got the voice and the presence for it. And this is a little bit of a supernatural spoiler, but I'm very sorry, Rob Benedict. Having God appear also has allowed for some hilarious moments, as well as provided an opportunity for a musical episode. And who does not want Tom Ellis to sing more? Because I definitely do, and I love that about the earlier seasons, that he used to sit at his piano and sing. But I also really like that they utilize the actors who could sing well instead of just forcing everyone to sing. It made the numbers sound pretty good and not as cringy as some of the musical episodes can be in different shows. The actors who play Ella, Maze, and Dan were great, and they used the extra episode actors to pick up more songs instead of having all the main characters do it. The musical episode also gave us Tom singing I Dreamed a Dream, which was an incredibly touching scene between Lucifer and his father, with his father finally kind of opening up a bit more to him. And as they sing together, I really love the way the light is kind of behind them, and there's like smoke, and they're both in a little bit of shadow. They both have some darkness that they are trying to overcome. And after they finish, God says, "My son, the light bringer, so full of light it blinds you sometimes." And Lucifer, of course, says, "What does that mean?" Always tired of his father's cryptic speaking. Now, God says it just means that he knows that Lucifer's been angry with him, but I think he means that Lucifer is full of goodness, that he's full of light, and he's full of light regardless of whether or not Lucifer can see it for himself. He shines so brightly, but is blind to it. And it's his father's way of saying that he believes in him, that he sees the good in him, even if Lucifer can't. And after this, we get another honest conversation between him and his father, with God saying, as a single tear rolls down his cheek, that he believes he's losing control of his powers. And I really love this episode for many reasons, but this scene is just perfect. I loved the lighting. I thought their acting was terrific. I thought their dialogue, their chemistry, I thought it felt really heavy, but also really good. It was a terrific end to the episode as Lucifer turns to his father and softly says, "Dad?" We also got another really touching moment at the end of episode 14 where God finally tells Lucifer that he loves him, that he's incredibly proud of him, of who he is, and that Lucifer was kind of right. He could have been a better father. And I think that just kind of comes back to the "my son the light bringer, so full of light it blinds you sometimes." He was always trying to tell Lucifer he loved him, but for whatever reason felt he couldn't just outright and say it. So he spoke cryptically to his son constantly. But it was really nice to finally see him be able to just full out say it. In the season 5 finale, the battle between Michael and Lucifer to become the next god comes to a head. And while Lucifer gains support of the angel of, I believe, righteousness, they still don't have the support they need to win. Michael has brought together the flaming sword and ends up stabbing and killing Chloe with it. Of course, Lucifer is incredibly upset, and he ends up going to heaven to bring her back, knowing full well that it will probably kill him because he is banned from heaven. But when he gets there, he discovers that the ring he was wearing, that was Maze's mom, Lilith's, is protecting him. And when he finds Chloe, he knows that that ring doesn't have enough power to save him and to send them both back to Earth. So he gives her the ring, putting it on her ring finger, a wink wink, and chooses to put her life over his. And he is finally able to tell her that he loves her. It's that moment of clarity that he gets where he can just say the 3 little words, "I love you." She ends up going back to her body, believing that Lucifer has died up in heaven, and uses the power that that part of the sword gives her, that she took from Michael, to beat him up pretty good. And when she's about to kill him, Lucifer appears unharmed behind her, and kind of alludes to him to maybe being the new god, where he says, "Oh my, me?" And this is such a wonderful and complete character arc. I am certainly intrigued where they're going next, but this self-hatred arc completion is just perfect. As I talked about before, Lucifer has become what he was told he was, but he has tried to fight it. It's why he left his throne to land in LA 5 years before meeting Chloe. It's why she was able to help him become a better man. It's why he was able to grow over the course of the show. He was always fighting the torrent of whispers that were telling him that he was evil. And to see him finally successfully cast away his own doubt of self-worth, to see him finally be able to say he loves someone else, and to see him grow out of that hatred for himself is just so fulfilling as an audience member, and it was about time that it happened. I also really liked the reveal about Ella Lopez. The darkness within her has been touched on briefly throughout the series, and seeing the glimpse into her session with Linda about just how deep that darkness really is was really intriguing. Ella also has a great scene with God where he tells her The darker the darkness, the brighter the light. And you, Miss Lopez, shine so very, very brightly. I can see it all the way from heaven. This exchange makes me think that there's something extra special about Ella. Not only do we see God noticing her a few times and watching her from a distance, but eventually singles her out to talk to her, to help guide her. His comment about seeing her from heaven makes me think that he has been really watching her for some time, and that he didn't just notice her when he came down. We also know she had a special relationship with the angel of death, Azrael, so I'm hoping that in season 6 we get more from this and we end up seeing why she's so special. Maze's arc was also really good. I liked Maze's quest this season to get a soul, and I think that this season really finally dove into her more and allowed for even more growth. We certainly saw glimpses into her throughout, but in season 5 I felt like a light was really shown on her and her growth was called out. Her looking for a soul from God, and as well as teaming up with Michael because she thought he could get her one, was really cool. And she, like Lucifer, wanted to prove she was good. I really liked that God wasn't able to just snap his fingers and give her one, but instead it was up to her to literally grow one. It was up to her to make that change within herself. We don't get to where we are because of outside forces, but, we look within. And she did. We saw that change throughout the show. And she used to be one of the voices that whispered in Lucifer's ear to not care. Or maybe she was shouting in his ear. But she too closed herself off to the world as much as Lucifer did. But we also saw her open up to Linda. We saw her open up to Trixie, to Dan, and to Amenadiel even. We saw her growth. And in season 5, they showcased it and gave her that strength. Again, I thought it was great that it wasn't something that was just given to her by God, and it wasn't something that she didn't necessarily have to do any work for. But it was something that she had been putting in the work for over the last 5 seasons, and she was finally able to get something. She was finally shown that her efforts were worth it. Okay, I said there wasn't going to be another spoiler alert, but here's another spoiler alert, because there is a huge detail that's about to be revealed. Not that the other details weren't huge, but whatever. So, Dan's death was something that I liked and hated, but in the end, I think I actually really liked it. Not only did it act as a catalyst for Lucifer to start to kind of accept that he feels love in his life and that he valued the friendships that he's made on Earth, but it also created one of my favorite scenes in the second half of season 5. And that's the scene at the hospital where Trixie shows up and asks about her dad. It was so incredibly heartfelt, and Scarlett Estevez, who plays Trixie, did such a great job in it. She always had a special connection with Lucifer, and I think it was really touching that she went to him for answers. She says, "Please tell me it's not true, Lucifer. I know you'll tell me, 'cause you never lie." And Lucifer just looks at her, more gently than he's probably looked at anyone ever in his entire life, and says, "My dear sweet child, I can't." And Trixie just falls into Chloe's arms. We see how much that this affects Lucifer. We see how much it affects Maze. Both of these characters are on a parallel journey, and we can see that Dan's death affects them both, that the loss of a friend actually matters to them. Because underneath all that teasing of Dan, Lucifer truly began to care for him. Dan's death also serves as a new mystery to solve. Why is he not in heaven? They think that it's because that he still felt guilt, but maybe this is actually tied to God saying that the underworld no longer needed a guard, and it's the reason why Lucifer was no longer necessary. We never really got an answer as to why that was the case. Or maybe this was Michael's doing. We know that he was involved in the plot that got Dan killed. Lucifer says that the system is broken and unjust, so maybe this means it will be a key focus in the next season, and we'll find out that there's more to Dan's afterlife than they thought. Now let's talk about things that I didn't like. Now, I mentioned that this show is canceled after season 3. I definitely didn't like that. The season 3 finale was also the episode that Chloe finds out that he's actually Lucifer Morningstar. So it was this huge cliffhanger, and I thought we were never going to get closure. But thank goodness, or thank Lucifer for Netflix for picking it back up. Now, I am not a therapist or a psychologist or psychiatrist, counselor, anything related to any of those fields, but I am fairly certain that Linda should not be licensed anymore. There are so many ethic violations. Obviously, sleeping with her client is not okay, and yes, that was kind of dealt with in, I think, the end of season 2, where May says she's going to take care of it, so we did see some fallout from that. So she must have done something to keep Linda registered. But I feel like there's also other gray areas. I don't know if it's technically an ethics violation, but I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to become friends with a client and probably not supposed to have a baby with your client's brother. They're not obviously as bad as sleeping with Lucifer was, but I don't think they're necessarily okay either. Of course, this is a TV show, so not everything's going to be 100% accurate, and rarely do professions get portrayed accurately in movies and television. But apart from all these issues, I still really love her character. And of course, Rachel Harris is just wonderful regardless. And also, maybe we can't entirely blame Linda. Maybe this isn't exactly her acting on her own. I mean, in seasons 1 and 2, especially of Lucifer, he definitely used his charm a lot more on people. Chloe. I haven't really mentioned her character much, and I do really like her. But it seemed like season 5, especially the second half, really just kind of turned her into a plot device instead of a character. Chloe had always kind of been a plot device. I mean, remember she was made by God to be for Lucifer as like a gift. But she still seemed to be a character. They solved crimes together. She had her daughter Trixie. She had past relationships, like with Dan. We saw her doing things outside of Lucifer. The show may have been called Lucifer, but they were a team while still being individuals. I mentioned earlier that this progression to a big storyline to, there being a god appear was organic and that they did it very well. Of course, I obviously still believe that since I said it like 5 minutes ago, but I do think there was some fallout from adding such a big storyline, and I think the larger they got, the more Chloe just seemed to disappear into the background and become more of a plot device. In the last half of season 5, we very rarely see her doing anything besides having whispered conversations with Lucifer about her feelings and his feelings. And anything that she does outside of it is typically about Lucifer. It felt like every scene she's in, she's just trying to figure out him. While earlier we saw both. We saw her solve crimes and also try to figure out Lucifer. I was also very confused why Chloe had to give up becoming a detective. The storyline with her mother and father taking turns and whose career they'd focus on was very weird. I mean, I get taking turns if it was like going back to school and they had to save up money for that, or if it was about childcare and being able to afford both parents working wasn't in the cards, or something along those lines. But her mom was an actress. Surely they had enough money for both of them to do their jobs? And then Chloe decides she has to quit being a detective so she can support Lucifer trying to be a god because he supported her being a detective. He didn't quit. I guess he kind of quit being the devil, but he didn't quit being the devil for her. He just quit because that's why he came to LA. And if he became a god, he could literally do anything. He can teleport. He can be somewhere in an instant. I mean, he already can do that. So why would she need to stop doing something she loves for him? I understand it's very important to support your partner, and I even understand why she was so hesitant to support him at first, because what would that mean for her as a human? But to give up a job so she could consult God? What does that even mean? I don't even think they knew what it meant. I'm still very confused, but maybe the next season will explain it more and it'll make a bit more sense. That's really the only thing I wanted to talk about. That's why I did this, because Chloe's entire storyline this season just didn't make sense to me. Anyway, so in conclusion, I still really like the show. I think there's things that they could probably work on, but overall, I think it's got a good storyline and good characters, pretty good acting, and I am definitely excited to see what happens next. Something I definitely hope we see in season 6, along with the other things I've already mentioned, is Ella finding out that Lucifer is Lucifer. Can this please happen already? I am really looking forward to her being like, what the heck? Season 5 was supposed to be the final season, but I am glad that they ended it the way that they did, and I'm definitely looking forward to season 6. It's going to be very interesting to see where they go from here. And there you have it. Those are my thoughts on Lucifer. Thank you so much for joining me. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Mixed Media Reviews. Don't forget to leave a comment or message me with any suggestions or if you have any thoughts about the things I've talked about. You can also find me anywhere you find your podcasts, as long as that is Anchor, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, or Radio Public. Please join me next week where I'm going to be reviewing a movie, and that is Wonder Woman 1984, but with a special guest. So have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye!